Hey everybody, Pete from the GenWell Project here on another big day. We have a big election happening south of the border. And also we have our good friend Libby Wildman who's joining us right away here. I must have clicked on something there, so great to have you.
Wasn't me, Pete. Wasn't me.
Hey, this is the learning that we're all going through as we learn technology and as we start into things like this Connected Conversation series. Before we get started, Libby, we like to do a little introduction of what Connected Conversations is and what the GenWell Project is. So those who may be joining us for the first time or maybe watching it after the live broadcast get a chance to know what we're here and why we're doing this. So Connected Conversation is a series of conversations that we started to have with people like Libby Wildman that help us connect with people, ideas, tools, and organizations that are making a difference in the world, especially as we go through these challenging times. And it all ties back to the GenWell Project, the human connection movement that since 2016 has been encouraging people and educating people about the importance of human connection in their lives, and more importantly, inspiring us all to take action. Today, we're very fortunate to have Libby Wildman with us today, an inspiring business leader who, aside from just what she does for work, has so many other commitments to making the world a better place. And I think that's what we're going to focus on today. But let me give you a proper introduction here, Libby. As the founder of Wildman Associates, Libby is committed to helping her clients achieve an abundance of wealth in all areas of life. And I think that's the key piece. Financial and beyond. Libby is very engaged with her industry and community. She's a lifetime member of Advocis, which is the Financial Advisors Association of Canada. I had to look that one up. I didn't know what Advocis was.
We say Advocis, but that's okay.
Okay, perfect. And a member of the CALU, which I think is the Conference of Life Underwriters. Is that right?
It's top people in our industry from across the country who get together usually every May and meet in Ottawa to make sure that the politicians in CRA are hopefully allowing us to still save our money and have tax effective ways of doing that. So it's not a lobbyist group, but we're really there to represent the public.
Well, and I think with all that's going on in the world today, those conversations are probably going to be more important than ever before as we figure out how to work our way through COVID.
Politicians are just people too, Pete, regardless of what we think tonight and what's going on as a gong show. Deep inside, they put on, as my grandmother said, one leg of pants at a time, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how we lose sight of that. And again, another great thing for us to touch on today as we go through this. But finishing off your bio, Libby is also involved with numerous mentoring opportunities and charities, both locally and internationally, involving children and women's rights. Libby Wildman, great to have you on Connected Conversations.
Yeah, thank you. I needed this today. I love speaking because it reminds me of all the things that I should be doing and talking about how to help others.
Well, and I think that's, an amazing thing. I was on a podcast yesterday, and I think what really, again, the number of opportunities I get to say, like, I'm almost sorry that I keep saying this, but human connection is, and the research now validates, it's the single largest thing that prevents us from depression. But there's a long journey between every conversation to get us out of our own heads and start thinking about all the good things that are in the world and maybe all the great things that you're doing as an individual. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to have this conversation.
I was thinking as we were waiting for the countdown, which I know the guests can see, and it sort of looks like snowflakes or the twilight zone, right?
Yeah.
And liminal escapes, which is my new endeavor to connect and help people to feel they belong. But the word liminal actually means we're in a time of transition. And for the first time, the whole world is in a time of transition. Our life has changed. We don't yet know our future. And you cannot say that anybody in any particular corner of the earth is not affected by this. But I was thinking about, the twilight zone. We have a long drive to and from our cottage. So I'm known as Google Girl with my partner, John. And we were looking up all of the different names. There's twilight and there's all sorts of different names before, just after it gets dark, before it gets dark. But twilight is truly that space in between just before the darkness arriving. And so I think it's a really interesting thing what you're doing with the GenWell project. I think we're all in the twilight zone that we actually have to have a project about having people come together because we're all tribal. This is like, we didn't used to have to do this. So it's kind of twilighty that we actually need to have a campaign to say, hey, people, we all need to get together and chat and have communities. And it's also twilighty in the fact that so many people are having problems with this. Like, it's just, so what you're doing is just so important. And I know you have bad days and I have bad days, and we all do. And so everybody's not being truthful if they don't say that they don't need those days when they have to reach out to somebody.
Oh, Libby, thank you for starting off the conversation so honestly. I think it's, and this is an interesting conversation today, because oftentimes we've had, positive psychologists, we've had psychologists, we've had mental health experts, we've had creative people, we've had business owners and leaders, which you would be, one of those, tie into those nicely. But what I was going to say is that oftentimes we're talking to the experts who, first and foremost, always need support as well, because oftentimes we forget about the caregivers. But I think actually having some human conversation and talking about the realities that people are living with each and every day is also really important. And I think you come from a very unique combination, Libby, and I hope this all makes sense to the people that are watching, is that you deal with, a wealthy group of people. The world that you live in your business are, well-to-do, but that doesn't mean that they don't have struggles and challenges as well. And I want to get into all that. And so I want to finish this question off. How much of what role do you play in supporting your clients? Yes, you do the financial stuff. Yes, you do insurance. Yes, you do the business. But what percentage of what you do with your clients is actually about being human and helping them stay connected and focused on some of the simple things?
I would say most of it. I mean, I'm really lucky. I have a chartered accountant who does the Excel spreadsheets that I can't do, and collecting of information. And I'm all about people. It's funny because my dad, who I used to work with for many, many years, but he's 82. And he used to say, in our next life, we're coming back as clam, because it's mostly a mouth. But we also remind ourselves that we have 2 ears to listen. The reason I got into building communities outside my business, and first of all, let me preface this by saying not everybody is wealthy that we deal with. And we have clients who are 18, we have clients who are 95. And some people who you and I may view as wealthy do not feel that they are wealthy at all. That is a huge piece of what interests me about being in the wealth management industry. And specifically, I deal with the insurance and the estate planning, which is simply money if you get sick or you die to help out your situation. And so people, we all define, you and I, Pete, have had conversations about this. We define ourselves by money. How much do we make? Do we save it? Do we give enough away? Do we live in a big house, a small house? What's my title? And so what I found over the years, 35 years of listening to people's stories, from, again, new immigrants to fourth generation Canadians to 16-year-olds to older people, is that we all have this money language, and it deeply affects us, and we deeply define ourselves by, but it's not actually who we are. It's just, one of my best friends is an infectious disease doctor. I'm always in awe of her. And she goes, well, I'm in awe of you. I'm like, why are you in awe of me? I just listen to people and help them figure out how to protect their families and their futures if, God forbid, they die too early or they get sick. But so it's this whole imposter syndrome and persona that having these conversations about, yeah, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert, but I have listened to people for 35 years, and I think I understand what makes people tick and how to help them. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. The saddest people in the world can have the biggest bank account, and you know that.
Yeah, I think, thank you for saying that, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for people to hear, and I will be honest, we've been on this 4-year journey with the GenWell project to educate people about the importance of social connection. And, because none of us were ever educated on this. We were told to go to the gym. We were told to eat better. And I do get a lot of people that, let's say, haven't been through a lot of challenges in their life, that look at me and kind of say, yeah, but I'm already socially connected. And my response to them is, well, first off, the world can change very quickly, because if, to your point, you touched on it, if you don't have your health mentally or physically, then all the money in the world. I know somebody who just got out of surgery yesterday for prostate cancer. Trust me, the bank account doesn't really, it may support them as they, have to cope with it. However, that doesn't mean that they're not sick or they get a pass on the surgery. So I think that's number one. And number two is just raising the consciousness for people about the impact that we can have on others through a simple conversation. Oftentimes we think of a donation or a check writing as the only way in which we can help people. And I think in the pandemic, more so than ever before, the recognition that the simple act of reaching out to somebody and having a conversation can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would say that I am very extroverted and very social, but I can tell you, I've been having a tough week, man. Mercury is finally leaving retrograde today, which is the movement of the planets. Look it up, everybody. It's a real thing. I'm so glad about that.
If I look like a deer in the headlights there.
Yeah. No,
I was
look it up. It's true. It's true. It's when the planets are moving and it creates, a full moon can create huge tides, right?
Yeah.
And another one of my best friends who's a midwife, there's more babies born on a full moon. So these tides and planetary pulls can play with your emotions. But it's been a weird couple of weeks. We've had in our inner circle, we've lost a few different people. Sadly, some to suicide and others to illness. I put critical illness in place for clients. So I'm aware of, outside of COVID, we've had 5 claims for cancer since March. So anyway, so it's been tough. And I was thinking about our conversation today. I was like, okay, Libby, so what do you do? So I've already pulled out all the stops, and I called my best friend, had a nice conversation today. I went and raked leaves for half an hour, hoping to put some flush in my cheeks and to feel good. And then I actually turned back to Deepak Chopra, and I did a 21-day abundance meditation thing that I created a group for with Deepak back in May. And I've kept it on my iPhone because there's just been so many days and I can't meditate. So Deepak's great because it's like 8 minutes of talking, 4 minutes of meditation. But it's just like I've done all 3 or 4 things today to try and just shake this feeling. And I'm social. I went and picked up my mom today to drive her down to get her car fixed. And normally I get out of the car and I give her a hug because she's widowed. She lives on her own. She's very, very young and spry, but nonetheless, she lives on her own. And I know she doesn't get human contact, skin to skin. So I feel badly I didn't today, but I was having a tough day. But normally I would just pull up, get out of the car, open the door for her, and give her a big hug because I know that people who are living alone actually need to be hugged and touched. So it's a lot of this is not complicated stuff.
It's interesting as I listen to you, Libby, I think, and I wrote down, so the first thing you did was call a friend. Then you went outside, you got connected to nature and had a little exercise, to your point, getting a little color in your cheeks. Then you did some mindfulness practices with Deepak. And then actually the one that you talked about it, but you may not have put it in the terms of Maslow's hierarchy, was you had purpose, which was you went and actually cared for another person. It happens to be your mom. Yeah. But I think that's so critical. And we heard this from the psychologists that we've talked to, is understanding when you do have that bad day, that you already know the things that you need to do. And as you say, you pulled those 5 things right out of your bag. You know your toolkit. You know your go-tos when you're going down. And I think that's a really powerful message for all of us to hear is, hey, even the strong people, and they always say, look out for the strong ones. The higher you go, the harder the fall. The reality is, as long as we know that we can check in each other, that we have our own tools, then maybe that's actually part of the solution that some of us just need to be more conscious of.
Yeah, I think so. And there's also, you can choose to watch a happy movie versus a sad movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can choose to, if you have a treadmill in your home, or go for a walk, and you can choose to go to a place that lifts you up, or you can choose to go to another place. The psychologists also say that after 1 minute, if you're angry at something or somebody or sad, after 1 minute, that feeling from a scientific physiological point of view is gone. But we will continually remind ourselves about it. right? And then we'll turn on the TV and watch the news or watch a sad movie that makes us cry. I've had people who say to me, oh my God, on Netflix, there's this show called Happy. Go and watch it, or when you're down, like go listen to, I don't know, Tim Ferriss or a podcast when I can't sleep at night, which I know is a big thing for women and probably is for men now too. I turn on someone called Tara Brock, who just speaks in this incredibly beautiful voice and talks about human emotions. And so, I get reminded that lots of people are feeling this. So I think we have to also be mindful of, are we making the right choices when we're having a bad day? But also, if you really don't feel you can make the positive choices, then hopefully you can call somebody really live that, like I'm the go-to with my mom, but I remember last week I needed to cry with a girlfriend. So I called her and she's like, I can't talk. It was 9 a.m. She goes, I can talk to you at 4. So I'm like, okay. So I actually saved up my whole emotional teardom and got on the phone with her at 4 and started to cry then. And I was like, oh my God, how did I hold that in all day? But I did. I just needed to share with somebody. And the moment it comes pouring out of you is the moment that you go, oh, okay, it's just a feeling. Actually, I'm fine.
I wonder if that was partially because you knew you had something to look forward to as, one of the tools in your toolkit, that allowed you to actually say, okay, well, let me get through the day and then I'll look forward to that phone call. And I think, again, having all those ideas of what we can do when we feel like we're struggling, I just think is so important.
I've always taught myself, Pete, that when I feel badly for myself, because I think I've had a pretty blessed and safe upbringing, and we continue to live in a great country and a great community. But when I feel sorry for myself, I always think, how can I be of service? And if I'm out on the sidewalk and I see whoever there, just go over and say hi. And it's amazing how that makes you feel better. And I don't even have to know them that well. But if you think about, what can I do for someone else? Or sometimes by surprise, there's an older couple who lives next to me. I'll shovel their driveway in the middle of the winter, or I'll put their garbage pail away. And they don't even know who does it. But I get this really yummy feeling that I did something for someone else.
Yeah, and don't share that. That's a secret that people aren't supposed to know about, that giving is actually all about you versus actually about helping other people. And I say that jokingly, but I think as we go through, and you talked about the fact we're going through this all together, I think people are questioning maybe some of the ways they've been pursuing life in the pandemic, and kind of questioning, like, what do I want on the other side of this? And I think the fact that nobody's escaping this, and for the most part, people aren't sharing human highlight reels on social media, so there's no keeping up with the Joneses right now, because we're all basically locked down in our homes and not traveling the world, or a whole bunch of other things. But I want to ask you a question, and sure. And again, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for being willing to share that you've had a bad day. I'm
just glad I didn't start to cry when I was having a bad day.
Well,
and hey, in front of a lot of people.
And that's okay, because the first question that we do ask, although I think you've touched on it, is just how are you doing? Because I think it's critical for us all to check in on each other. But there's another part that I think I need to delve into, and it's the question that's on the screen, which is, you are a business leader, you're an entrepreneur, but you have somehow found community to be the catalyst for not only your success in life, but your success in business. So I want to say, tell us more about that. How is community driving your success in all parts of who you are?
I think the older I get, the more I am trained through a number of different coaches, but just to think about what brings me my most joy, and what am I good at? And so I find that very hard for you to call me a leader and successful and all that, because honestly, I go into the office, well, I don't anymore, but I talk to people about their problems, and hopefully we bring them some comfort and solve those. And in fact, I joined Davis Ray 2 years ago because I was tired. My dad retired, and I was tired of being on my own, and I wanted to join a bigger community. So I'm at Davis Ray. But I recognized it started off with women entrepreneurs, who were a big part of my business. And they kept saying to me, Libby, I have like this issue at work. Like we've got a cultural problem going on, or I'm trying to hire someone, or I need to raise money. And I only know guys to ask. And sometimes guys just don't get me. They don't get being a woman. They don't get that I'm a mom, or they don't get that I'm this and that. You must know other women entrepreneurs. Can you put me in touch with somebody? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Okay. Like, let's go and have lunch. So then I would take people for lunch, but that became very, very time consuming. So I decided to go out on a whim and invite 10 women to my home one night for dinner. And I came home early and cooked, and the women didn't know each other. And they were all different: real estate, midwife. One was a TED Talk speaker. Another was, a script writer, actress. Anyway, they were all walks of life. And they came to my home, and we each took 20 to 25 minutes to talk about ourselves and what we were going through in that moment and what we potentially would want help from. And then we would go around the table and do what I call experiential sharing, which is telling somebody a story about how they felt when they were dealing with that same topic. So it could have been personal, or it could have been, there's one woman who kept losing employees. So another entrepreneur said to her, well, when I was going through that, here's what I did to help solve that problem. And the first night, everybody stayed till midnight, and it just became apparent that, and everybody cried, because women, when they get stressed or frustrated, cry, and it's kind of like it bubbles up, it comes out, comes over, you cry, and then you're like, oh, I'm fine now. And women won't go up to women and go, oh, there, it's okay, and here's a Kleenex box. Women just go, yeah, I got you, sister. Whereas crying in front of men, they might think, oh, I did something wrong, or how do I handle this, or oh my God, she's crying. So it just became really apparent that we needed this. And I was doing it more and more. And I was saying to my kids, you have to go upstairs for the evening. These are very private conversations. And people said, can I bring my friend? And when's the next time we meet? And it was truly just about connection and being felt that you're in a room full of women who didn't judge you. They were all there to listen to you. In fact, I had a timer, so you had to listen to these people. And it was just this wonderful space. So I think the power of that just really urged me on to do more of it. And so I'm a little embarrassed to say, what's my secret gift in life? I'm just good at connecting people and helping people feel like they belong. Like, honestly, that's my big gift. And at times I wish it was bigger, but it seems to be serving a purpose right now.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you've hit on some really key elements. First off, I would actually say maybe your bigger gift might be the confidence to go first. Because obviously every person in that room, Libby, wanted to share.
Yeah.
And, we all know that, we all want to help other people. We want to be connected. It's a human innate need we all have. As you said, we're tribal by nature. But yet, how come we sit at home, and we are distracted? Now, certainly the distractions are greater than they've ever been before, but we all know that this thing can be used as a phone. We all know that we can pick it up and now call and actually do a face-to-face, but yet most of us still just sit and we isolate ourselves because it's too easy to do it, and it takes an effort, and you have to get over a hurdle to actually reach out to people, especially if you've lost touch, in case, maybe you've had a struggle and you don't feel up to it. And I think a big part of the message for us as the GenWell project, and I think this is what you've done with your collective, is, we want to encourage people to stay and help people build healthy connection habits ongoing, which means, hey, always keep it as part of your lifestyle, keep it in balance so that you're always maintaining those. But for those of us, and maybe Libby, you're a great example of this, sometimes people can't do it because they don't feel like they're up to it, because they're having a bad day. But if we can raise the collective consciousness about how important human connection is and the difference that we can make in each other's lives, maybe one of us can pick up the phone and call that person who's lost a job, who's dealing with divorce, who has trouble with the kids, who's maybe homeschooling 3 kids at a time when they're also trying to manage a business. We can think of the 1,000 different ways. Think of health issues, somebody who's been diagnosed with an illness, or, dealing with a chronic illness. All those things are reasons for us to have up and downs in our lives. And if we can recognize that, now the research shows it's more important to stay socially connected, then exercise and eating well. Those are still important. But now that we know the facts that, human connection is the single largest thing that makes us happy, reduces anxiety and depression, increases empathy, compassion, resilience, can increase our chances of living longer by up to 50%. But most of us don't know it. So we don't think of it as a solution. And that's our goal, working with the GenWell and people like yourself and spreading this message, because I think collectively, not to use the collective word too much today, but it is about a collective and you're leading it.
I mean, Pete, that's crazy. So, that's like, it's better for you than quitting smoking. I mean, all the insurance companies should be on board with you. This should be
That's a great comment.
Campaign. Right. So we're going to try and help fix that. But it should be a massive campaign. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the corollary of that, because some days I actually feel overwhelmed as the it girl in my family too.
Yeah, totally.
So everybody calls me, and some days I'm like, okay, I'm having a bad day too, or I actually need to work and I don't have time, or quite frankly, the emotional space to be constantly worrying about your worry. And so, again, it was just with my mom, I finally phoned my younger brother, who's great, but he lives in Barrie and can't come to Toronto very often. I just said, Matt, I can't do this all by myself. I need you to come down in the next weekend or two and spend a day with mom. And I need you to call more often, because I'm crumbling under this immense weightiness of being the it person too. And then my parents, and I mentor a lot of young people. So I think it's also for people like you, Pete, who also are maybe doing more than your share of trying to help people out, that we also have like a little flag to wave every once in a while and go, I'm drowning here too. So who can we call to enlist? And so I said to my mom the other day, she goes, oh, I know this is hard on everybody, but it's particularly hard on the old people. And God, is this going to be like the last couple of years of our lives? I said, Mom, okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to start to go through the list of everybody in our family who's available, and text them and call them and say you want to see them. I mean, you've only got about 8 or 9 people. It doesn't have to be me all the time. So I just had to remind her, give so-and-so a call, text so-and-so. They're happy to see you. They just forget because their lives are busy too. So again, I need to help my mom, but then my mom also needs to help herself. So there's different levels, right, of capability. If somebody is truly dealing with, deep depression, then sure, they're not able to make those phone calls. But those of us that are, I really encourage people to say, instead of sitting there, nobody's psychic. I don't know that she's having a bad day or whatever it is, but there's no shame in reaching out and saying, hey, can I come for dinner?
Yeah, I do believe. And again, our message with the GenWell project is, hey, if we can get everybody, the health system is tapped. We can see it through COVID. Our governments are going to be tapped on the other side of this. And I really do believe, and one of the enlightening things that's come my way in the last couple of weeks is recognizing that the Canadian government in 1942 launched the Canadian Food Guide in order to support people in their short-term health needs by eating well, because they knew that they needed people out of the food that was available to eat the best food possible to keep us healthy, so that we could continue to support the war and what we were doing both at home and on the front lines. In 1971, we launched a proactive health measure called Participation. And Participation was about educating people on physical activity, because they saw from a 1969 study that Canadians had become apathetic about exercise and keeping their health. So we know about food because we've been told it for 80 years. We know about physical activity. But if we can actually raise the collective consciousness about the importance of human connection, if we can get this moving, and I love and thank you, and I really do appreciate your offer to connect with insurance companies, because I think after 4 years, we're just now becoming conscious of exactly what we are. We are a movement. We are trying to educate a population. But I actually think that if we can educate people, we will stop waiting until your mom is sick before, whether it's a neighbor or a family member or an old friend or somebody says, you know what, I'm going to pick up the phone because I understand the difference that phone call will make. If it's a neighbor, whether it's, in a retirement home or in a community, if we can raise the consciousness about the role we can play with, I have a deaf sister, with handicapped people, with people that are, that don't feel like they're included for whatever reason, marginalized community, LGBTQ, all the different ways in which we can segment the world. If we can build bridges and connect people and recognize that we all bleed red and we're all just human beings, then that actually is the aspiration that we have as the GenWell Project, because I think it'll make your mom happier, because people will be more apt to reach out, but it'll make us all happier, both for the people that are reaching out and for the people receiving.
I remember participation, and I remember the flexed arm hang and how painful it was to let go, but I was competitive. Anyway, it was a great program. I don't know why they did away with it.
You competitive, Libby? Come on.
Oh, no, it was super fun. But I was a candy striper in grade 8 at the Oakville Trafalgar Hospital. And I remember, oh my God, I actually had the cute little candy striper outfit on. I almost looked like I worked at Swiss Chalet. But one of my favorite things to do was they would send me up to the long-term care floor, and I would, I'd help feed the people sometimes. But a lot of times I would just sit and play cards or read a book and chat with them. Like, that's the GenWell Project. So I'm thinking, you know what we need to do, Pete? We need to get like stickers that people have in their window called the GenWell Project. And I've signed on, and maybe you send everybody 10 tips, because I just think most people actually don't know what they can do. So if they're 10 tips, maybe not everybody is going to go knock on their neighbor's door, but if you see somebody out there, maybe you could be the person on your street that organizes the emails. Like our street, everybody has each other's emails. And somebody on our street organized a little Halloween parade because there wasn't Halloween anymore. And they asked everybody just to come out and stand on the sidewalk and clap for the kids. And I'm like, wow, how cool is that? So I think we need to work like on getting a sponsor that'll be able to do stickers and like list of 10 things. But, like I'm a GenWell member, because this should be national. This should be people reminding people, oh, you're a GenWell member? What does that mean? It means I care about human connection, and I'm actually making a commitment to reach out to people once a week, once a day. You could have different levels, right?
Oh, Libby, thank you. I should have had you on the show a year ago, because I could just take this snippet and send it to every company in Canada and just say, hey, do you see how the activation of this happens? And I will say that I've thought of the block parent concept, where just by putting that logo in the front window, you acknowledge to people that you understand the value of human connection. And again, whether that means that you're going to reach out or that other people know that you're open to outreach, that is
the conversation. Pete.
Exactly. That's the catalyst.
What is the GenWell Project? Oh, let me tell you about it. So for sure.
Yeah, I had so many questions here that related to your business and how you connected it back. But I actually think, we've covered off a lot of it. And I think we're just going to stay on this whole idea of just talking about the importance of community. And I want to build on, because I saw your post about the seniors connecting with young people. And there's an organization in Ottawa called iGen Ottawa who's doing just that. And I think there's a lot of organizations through the crisis who are finding ways to support our seniors, and frankly, not just our seniors, but our young people, because social connection is really critical to them. And our goal as a GenWell is to be the catalyst that kind of gets to the root of it, which is human connection. But it can look like so many different things. What have you, as you've been going through COVID-19, what have you been doing to keep your connections alive?
Well, lots of things. I mean, everybody is obviously doing the FaceTime thing, but I find if I get out and rake the leaves on my front lawn, invariably somebody walks by and they're all so happy to sit and chat. Like it's really, really simple stuff. I'll tell you, I'm checking in with my kids. I have 2 of my kids on the East Coast. So they're now in a bubble. I don't know when I'm going to be allowed to see them. They're certainly not coming home for Christmas because then they have to quarantine again. But I am paying extra attention to, hey, how you doing this week? Because my one son's in second year Dalhousie and my other daughter moved out there because Toronto was too expensive. But I just keep saying, hey, everybody's going through a hard time. Want you to know, if you're having a bad day, just reach out. I'm here. And I think sometimes it's even just saying the obvious, like, we're all having bad days these days. You may be fine today, but if you're not tomorrow, I want you to know to reach out or go see your sister or do something. Like, it's just actually speaking about the obvious. I think that's the most important thing, is just really, really going, you sure you're okay? Because everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And and sometimes you're not. Suicide's up this year. Like, that's a tough topic, but it is all ages. Really good friend of mine. I'm so, so proud of her. She's a very successful entrepreneur and is styling back in life, and much with this whole thing about how can I give back. She took a 6-week course and is now one of the people who receives and responds to texts for the Kids Helpline, which is mostly at night. It starts at like 10, 11 o'clock, midnight. And she was really nervous about doing it at first, but there was a manager on the line with her the first couple of times as to how do you respond to this stuff. But I'm like, how cool is that the Kids Helpline moved to texting? Like, that person was brilliant, because how is it the people that are suffering need to be communicated? Do they need to see you in person? Maybe they don't want to. Do they need to go for a walk? Do they need to FaceTime? Or, like, I've had so many people say, can we Zoom? And I'm like, no, I'm so done with Zoom, actually. No. And I feel yucky today or ugly or whatever. So let's just do a call. Oh, okay. So, I think it's important, but it's also important for those who are suffering to know that the Kids Helpline for texting is available. And there still are communities that during COVID are up and running, and real live people to people is still available. So, I don't know whether you share, Pete, it's a national thing, but whether you share communities and resources for people who are feeling, sad or in need of help.
Yeah, we share it in the context of, hey, when you're in crisis, that's not our job. Here are the people that can help you with that. Because our big message, as you know, Libby, is, hey, let's not wait till we're sick before we start to help people. And let's make sure that we're creating those conversations proactively. To your point with your kids is, hey, I talk to them every day or every second day so that we don't get into a crisis before we have a conversation. Because when we connect with our loved ones and people who care about us, whether it's family or friends or relatives, whatever the case may be, those are the people that will actually make sure that we recognize the beauty of who we are, of the things that we have and that we're blessed with, and how we can seek the support that we need before we get into the crisis and we end up calling, in a bad state and having to call somebody like Kids Help Phone. And there certainly are lots of marginalized communities that don't have, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a big part, is one of our community partners. We've certainly talked to the people at Kids Help Phone. We'd love to get them as one of our community partners, because really we want to be about prevention. If I think of the spectrum, we can continue to help people that are in the crisis through, great services like Kids Help Phone. But what we really need to do is start getting people to recognize the importance of social connection as a preventative health measure. And we need to start educating people. I did a webinar a few weeks ago, and he said, if you had one wish, what would it be? And my comment was, I wish we could go back 40 years and educate people on the importance of human connection, so that people that are living alone, the 28% of Canadians that live alone, from the people who are feeling isolated because they don't have 8 hours or 10 hours a day in a workplace surrounded by other people, for the people that are elderly, for the people, who are addicted, for the people experiencing isolation and loneliness for whatever reason possible. If all of those people understood that social connection, spending time and connecting with other people, is one of the most important things that they can do in order to stay healthy and to recover and deal with any crisis, well, that to me would be an amazing thing. And now we're trying to catch up. Now we're trying to educate a society.
Here's a really, really big chasm that's about less than 2 months away. Christmas. It's a big deal. I've been talking to my mom because she's like, oh, I guess Christmas is canceled. We won't get together. And, Anyway, we've rented a place up north because I don't think I can work at my kitchen counter for the rest of the winter, and I want to be able to get outside. And I said, Mom, we will have all the young people who are coming. I mean, two of my kids are stuck in the East Coast. They won't be there. But the young people that are coming will go and have a COVID test, and we will have Christmas, and you'll be there for 2 nights. Well, I don't have snow tires, so I won't be able to get up. I will make sure that somebody will pick you up and you will get up. But I'm so glad that that came out, because she would have worried about that for the next 2 months. And so that's off the table. But I have an ask for everybody. There are a lot of people, the same way as my two kids are stuck on the East Coast, there's a lot of American kids that are stuck here. A lot of kids from India, not even kids, whoever it is, family, just people who are not going to get to go home, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, and be with your community and your families. And so if you at all have the resources, the capability, mentally, emotionally, the space to invite somebody that you know is going to be alone at Christmas for whatever reason, but particularly those that are stuck in our country because they can't go home and come back again, I really ask that you consider that. And I'm doing this with a friend's daughter who's here at school. And I'm going to ask her to, not see people really as much as she can for a week before she comes and spends time with us. And again, have a COVID test. But why wouldn't I have her come up? If my child was stuck somewhere, I would really hope that some family or parent or mom would invite my kids in for some camaraderie and feeling. And so Christmas is going to be a really, really, really big one.
Yeah. And first off, thank you for making that request and sharing it. This is about the enlightenment. I even when I started GenWell, I remember in the first couple months, I said to somebody, hey, wouldn't GenWell weekend be a great time for you to connect with your neighbor? And their response was, well, how would I get a hold of my neighbor? I don't know their email. and
Yeah.
and for a second, I thought they were kidding, and they weren't.
Yeah.
And this is how we are so caught up in the world that we were in. Obviously, the pandemic is awakening us to a lot of things. But I think just by communicating what you just said, Libby, awakens people to, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. That kid that's living in the basement apartment 3 doors up that I see walk by the house every day. I never even thought that person could be a young student who's here going to college or university, who's, on their own. And boy, Libby, that was a great idea. I hadn't thought of it. And I think that's what we can all do by raising people's consciousness, is just say to people, hey, did you think about an elderly person? Did you think about somebody who's an international student? Did you think about a young person who's, because I think in Toronto is one example, I think 30% of students, I may be wrong, so I hope nobody gets upset with this one. I think 30% of students are still doing remote learning at home in the public system. So those kids aren't getting the socializing, but fathers, and we've done something on our street where we have a WhatsApp group, and now every day at 4:00, when the first parent is going to the local park, we text all the other families and say, we're taking the kids up, who wants to come? And just by taking that little proactive step, now we can actually ensure that even if a kid isn't going to school and isn't getting the socialization that we have all grown up with, that they get the opportunity to do it at least for an hour or so a day. And so I think just taking those proactive steps and thinking, giving ideas like you just did, I think can really help people. And we're going to be sharing a lot of tips and tools over the next month.
Having neighborhood GenWell leaders, like the Scouts. You're going to have a GenWell leader in your neighborhood, because that is such a fabulous idea. Silken Lauman, who was Canada's bronze rower, she should have been a gold, but she'd had that accident.
Yeah.
She actually started that. Her thing was that kids no longer have unstructured play.
Yeah.
And so she would organize different people in different neighborhoods, and kids would go and meet and have an unstructured game of baseball or play or whatever it is. But I honestly think, Pete, that there's so many people who will do what you're saying they should do. They just haven't thought about it. And so if we can help to send that message, and again, put ideas out on paper or an email or a sticky pad or whatever it is, and just say, hey man, here's some ideas. And then people go, oh, awesome. Let's do this. Like the pots and pan banging. I don't know who started that, but we did it a couple of times. And it was hysterically funny. And we all felt like, back then we were not 2 meters apart. We were like 60 feet apart. Everybody was so paranoid, right?
Yeah.
And but it was still a fun and a giggle to do with your neighborhood. So
I often say, Libby, it just takes a catalyst, and that catalyst, our Genwell weekends, which were in May and September prior to COVID, all we were was a catalyst to say to people, on this weekend, let's celebrate. One of the things I jokingly say, it's not even a joke per se, but we have celebrations of life after people die. We need to shift the paradigm here. We need to start celebrating life before people die. And so what we wanted to be was a catalyst so that people would say, okay, on those weekends, we have so many days and weeks that we celebrate negative aspects of the world, highlighting this issue or that issue. At the end of the day, we need to start, no different than telling a kid, you don't tell the kid to look at the purple elephant standing in the corner or not to look at him, because he's going to keep looking there. But if we can actually educate people on the importance of human connection, and we can actually give them those tips and ideas like you just suggested, I actually think people, to your point, will buy into it. And there are a lot of organizations, even cities, and I was working with a city in Ontario who said, people, we already do barbecues, we do skating parties, we do all these other things. And my comment to them was, yes, but unfortunately people don't understand why. They don't understand that you're not doing it because it's a KPI on your, to-do list. You're doing it because it actually makes them happier and healthier. And how many times have we all been invited to go to a party or a gathering with somebody and we're like, I'm a little tired, I don't feel like doing it. Yeah. And when we do go, we say, oh my God, thank goodness that I went and did that, because I feel so much better. And that's the education that I think comes from a movement like the Genwell Project. So, I couldn't agree with you more. And there's organizations out there that are building infrastructure. We're having a conversation with 880 cities who actually builds social infrastructure, builds parks, builds community type gathering places. Wow. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. So again, together we can make the world a happier and healthier place, but it starts by educating people about the importance of human connection.
So Pete, in ways that people can get involved, right? So how can people help Genwell? Do you have a button that people can donate money to you?
Libby, you are I love the fact that you just I know what you're doing, because you're just so generous. You're like, you want to do something to help. And so I thank you. Yeah, I thank you for that. The first and foremost thing, it's always about the people first. Our first and foremost thing is follow us on our social platforms so that you can get tips, tools, ideas, and even connected to people like Libby Wildman and hear those stories and hear the reality of what's going on in the world, so that we can all be inspired to stay more socially connected. But yes, we don't charge for our information. We are a free, open source resource, but we do need money. We do need people who get what we're doing. We need those who can afford to give, to contribute to creating the sustainability of the movement. And as I said, with, whether it was the food guide or whether it was participation, there was a time when we could look at the government to actually be the catalyst. I don't think the government is going to have much left when this is all done. So it is going to come to businesses, to communities, to individuals who say, I understand what you're doing and I recognize how important it is, because the facts are there. And so, yes, there's a donate button on our page, but if anybody wants to talk about partnerships, work together, we are an opportunity for everybody to be part of a solution that every person in this country and globally needs to hear. And that's very inspiring to me, to think that we can talk to anybody and find a way to connect not only the purpose and the mission of the movement, but to you as an individual or you as a business, and make it a win-win proposition. So thank you for asking that question.
You do public speaking in the corporations, right?
We do a lot of corporate speaking. So yes, we just had a couple more booked today. So exciting for those opportunities. And it really is about sharing the information with employees. Employees have lost that 8 to 10 hours a day that they used to spend with other people. But if they don't understand the importance of human connection, maybe they're trying to fill those gaps with other things. And, some of them may not even be healthy choices, but, hopefully we can educate them so they can get through this in the very best way possible. So, Libby,
go.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say one of the things we've been doing. I mean, at Davis Ray, we're 12 or 13 people, but with it getting dark earlier,
Yeah.
it's really that's been tough on everybody, and so we're really blessed that our leaders have said to everybody on our Wednesday Zoom calls, um, go for a walk at 2 o'clock while it's still bright out and the sun's out and it's lovely, and maybe if you don't get all your work done, you do it at 7 o'clock. But if you want to go for an hour hike during the daylight, do it. Like, you have the flexibility because we are working from home. It is the truth. But I think, again, you need to be given that permission by the leaders in your organization to say, I recognize that you may be uncomfortable going for 2 hours during the day to go and do something because those are work hours. I'm telling you, do it and get your work done when you can.
I think it's great advice. I think leaders need to give people the permission. And I think we all need to recognize that this isn't changing anytime soon for most of us. So creating these habits that will keep us happier and healthier as we move forward, scheduling the walk, scheduling the call with your friends a couple times a week or a couple times a day, because each of us needs social connection to different extents. All of those things in our calendar, because it's not like we used to go to the office and everything was kind of created for us, from meetings to lunch to the water cooler to the even the washroom where you'd have those casual collisions. We now need to put them in the calendar to make them happen. Yeah. So, yeah. Libby, I just want to end off by asking you the question we ask everybody at the end of this, which is, and first off, thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable off the top. Number two, thank you for being a champion of human connection in both the work you do, and since you and I met 6 weeks ago, being a champion for the Gen Well project, and really about understanding that this isn't just something that's a nice to have. This is something that everybody needs to have, whether it's in their organizations, in their families, or in their communities. So I want to thank you for all that. But the last question we like to ask everybody is, what are you going to do to celebrate, the end of COVID, when we can get back to we'll call it the new normal? We've got a vaccine, we got treatments, and we can get back to the life that we were once accustomed to. What do you think you're going to do to celebrate?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask you when, your next live Gen Well parade sort of walk is, because I will for sure go and do that and be a volunteer, because I actually didn't know about the Gen Well before you and I started talking. And I think this is amazing and so important. But I love parties, and every May we used to, ever since my daughter was like 2, get a big jumpy castle in our backyard. And then I'm always about the multi-generational parties. So the grandparents, the parents, the kids, the grandkids. And the jumpy castle is always the favorite, even though the kids are like in their 20s now. So we will be doing the jumpy castle keg, and I get an ice cream truck to come by.
You have hooked on all the secret sauces. I agree. The jumpy castle, and maybe there is a business there, Libby, of creating jumpy castles for elderly people. And I mean like 40 plus, because we still all want to be in that castle. We just know it may collapse if I get in there. So
well, my dad went into the jumpy castle. He was 80, and he was an athlete, so he's got a few extra pounds on him, and he kind of got stuck in the crack. But I can tell you, it's our favorite story at Christmas, because my kids had to go and like grab Grandpa's hands and pull him up out of the jumpy castle.
I can totally see it, because I know the crack, like on the sides. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh boy,
Exactly. So, but he still had his beer, so that was okay.
Hey, there's a guy who he's a seasoned drinker. Yeah. And as a guy from 20 years in the beverage alcohol industry, I understand what that's all about.
Yeah. Exactly.
Libby, I want to say thank you. And last thing, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to know more about the collective, the Luminal experiences, if they want to know more about the work that you do, where can people find you?
Yep. Well, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. Libby Wildman is pretty easy to remember, and just LW at Davis Ray. But just shoot me a note on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to people about anything. And if I can't help you, I promise you, through my 2 communities, which are now hundreds of women and other entrepreneurs, I will know somebody that can help you.
That's amazing. Libby, thank you for being a champion of human connection. And thanks for sharing today with us on Connected Conversation.
Awesome. Ciao.
Have a great day, my friend. Ciao for now.
Bye.